is this, boy, I'll tell you, so it was a 6:30 meeting, we're now meeting at 8 o'clock. Jared.
Yes, ma'am.
Don't be late.
Don't be late, yeah. Now, we were gonna have all the time in the world, but now I'm gonna say some of us have to get up early, go to bed early, get up early. Right, Walter?
Sort of.
What you're saying, ma'am, is we were robbed, right?
We were robbed. That's exactly right.
I completely agree.
Bunch of armed robbers.
No
in
one
this
expects
room.
me home until 10:30 anyway, so I'm good.
So you want to go through this then line by line, word by word?
Yeah, we are. I think we're gonna just memorize it like poetry. Okay, so let's do your budget packet preliminary.
The budget packet, and again, and that was joking, I'm not going to go through this word for word for the board.
Oh, no, I'm quite serious. I think they should all sit here and listen to how we arrived at every number.
It was sent out, I think last Thursday I emailed it out to everybody. And it really is, it's a lot of information. It is something that I'm not going to bore you with tonight of going line for line. It highlights it gives you information on all the different expenses that you see in our budget typically, all the different revenues you see typically, kind of the codes, what they mean, that type of information, which I'm not gonna sit here, especially that it's already 8 o'clock and go through page by page for you.
But please point out the most important things in each section. Whatever
Yeah,
you think is the
absolutely.
most
The
important.
first section gives you a history of our fund balance and our budget and both our budgeted revenues and our budgeted expenditures for really the past 10 years. And where we've come in at. And as you can see, typically on revenues as a district, we come in roughly around 100% collection of revenues compared to 100, around 100%, 101%. Last year, of course, was 104%, and that was mainly because of COVID. And when we did that, put the 2021 budget together, we really looked at trying, we didn't know how COVID was going to affect our revenues. Lucky as a district, and thanks to all the taxpayers, our revenues came in way higher than we had budgeted for, which is a good thing. So that's why you see that 104. The bottom graph there is shows the bar graph of where our fund balance has been over the past couple of years.
And you're on page 3.
Yes, on page 3, and as it has increased over really since 10 years, we saw a slight dip there in 2013-14, and I guess I could, Randy, the packet is connected to the agenda, so who do we have online? Dr. Schaefer, Dr.
So
Ray.
our current fund balance is what? Because we only have about 2 weeks, folks, before we have to approve the preliminary budget. So I think what I'm most concerned about is making sure that we're prepared for pretty well by May 9th what you think the fund balance is going to be.
Yeah, right now, and kind of goes into, there is a projection back in the budget detail that shows I'm expecting the fund balance to be at the end of this year around 8.6 million. And that's an increase.
Yeah.
That does not take into account at this point any money that the board may vote to transfer to capital reserve. If you choose to do that, we typically do that later on in the year after we've closed out the previous year, see where we actually come in at.
But we could do it as, I think the benefit tonight is we have kind of a ballpark figure of where we're going to be
Yeah,
with the building project. So we went with scheme. We're thinking we'll probably go.
Which page are you on, Julia?
Well, he doesn't have the budget numbered.
it's close. It's the budget
The
details.
first page
At
of
the back.
budget. We're in the back.
Okay.
Do we have enough in our general fund? That's the construction, like to do the East Pike roof and the East Pike HVAC and the remodeling back there and stuff. Where's that money at?
we usually talk about the capital reserve at the next, that's sitting in capital reserve, that's not sitting in the general fund, so we're not
But
really.
we could move general fund money to capital reserve.
You could.
And we were talking about last meeting, you were here, I think,
Yeah.
no, you were still,
You were, he was on.
He was at the
you were at the
meeting.
meeting, oh, yeah. So we were talking about moving a good bit, but
Right.
I think it was 5 million is what I proposed.
But I think,
Tom wanted,
And I told
yeah,
you
but
we were
what, where I'm going at, the last estimate for back here was just about 1.1 million, right?
There is, I believe off the top of my head, I don't have the information in front of me, probably around $2.3 million left. There's what's sitting in capital reserve right now, so
okay,
between the roof, the HVAC, you're probably looking at
Mechanical.
mechanical work, taking that office out, but just the new roof. I would say you're probably looking at eating almost all of that out.
Right,
So-
that's where I was going with it.
okay, so we'd be down to, take out East Pike renovation and we're down to 0 on the cap reserve. What's the other one, the capital reserve and capital fund?
We have capital projects, which is the leftover money from the bond lending that we did back in 2017 or 2016 for the
Ben Franklin.
Ben Franklin
So
project.
that's what about now, 7 million?
It's about $6 million.
6 million, okay. And based on the numbers that Mr. Buchard Horn gave us, so we're looking at about 14 million. That's what we're gonna need to do Eisenhower.
And I'm gonna say that's gonna grow.
Well, yeah, you're probably right. I mean, because, you know, that's a, so let's just, let's put a number on the table. Let's pad the number a little bit. Let's say, once you get everything rolling, let's say 16 million is a cushion, okay?
Maybe more.
So, what number would you want?
20.
But no, I'm not that gutsy. Then we can't run anything if it goes out.
We can't run anything.
Well, if we're, that's a lot, that's a big difference between those two numbers.
Mr. Hurley, how
17,
How accurate do you think that number is, that projection they gave?
It's very fuzzy.
how fuzzy?
What would you say would be a safe number for budgeting purposes?
16-1.
That's not a fair question.
No, it
They
isn't.
have more in it, but I know the numbers they're using are national averages. And they're just using straight square footage.
Okay, so what would a pad be? We're at 14. Would you say if we went up to, I said 16, he wants to go to 20. What about
No,
17?
No.
I'm just trying to come
You
up
don't
with a
think
number.
20?
Doesn't have to be perfect.
I don't think we have a project if we go to 20. So I think we have to keep it at 15 number, and we have to do it by being smart about what we're building and how big we're building.
Okay, but let's just do it for imagination's sake.
Then do it at 16. Take-
16,
18,
17,
19.
16.
I'm
This is-
good with the 16.
This,
My concern, I think Tom makes a good point, because if we get north of 20 or anywhere close to 20, then it's another mega school.
no, it's not.
No,
That
it's
was
not.
32. They were
Which was
saying
gonna
it was
be
32,
48.
and we knew it was gonna be at least 40 or 42.
48.
Okay.
Well,
But
after you
no,
put
it's
that
not
light
another,
in.
it's not another mega school. It's,
Yeah,
and
you're right, because that was a 70,000 brand new build, and this is a 20,000 remodel and a 15,000 build.
no,
16.
anybody that accuses us of doing a mega school is they're gonna have a hard time, because
My concern is if the price tag gets to a certain point, then that is the,
but the price
We are
tag
on
is
that.
gonna get to that point.
Look at
what-
inflation, though, between 2016 and now.
It's gonna come
Look at the
down.
East Pike office.
well,
It
anyway,
was supposed to be what, 1 million, it ended up being 1.5?
so
Let's go with 17 is for budgeting purposes
Walter, can
right
you
now.
live with 17?
Yeah.
Sarah, can you live with 17? Just for now, we can, but at least it gives us a fixed point.
Yeah,
Okay. Because we're gonna be.
We are gonna work hard. We
So-
always do.
so what you're
Thank
trying
you,
to
Maren.
bring this back to our discussion tonight, what you're trying to do is figure out how much out of the fund balance we can use for this project.
Thank you. Couldn't have said it better. So we've got a healthy fund balance. but we still have to run this district, and and your revenues constantly go up, and you told me, I think you said you're expecting a 9% increase in healthcare.
We are, yes. I mean, this budget projection page that you're looking at I did add a year under Mr. Kerr's direction to project out another year. Based on the current projections, in 3 years, we have a negative fund balance without transferring any money at this point. So
Yeah, but you always say that.
He never says negative fund balance of $8 million, like he's got 3 years out.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, but
no,
I don't-
it goes to negative fund balance real fast.
It does that.
Yeah.
So what do you say for East Pike?
the total cost,
You'll wipe out
Wipe out the cap reserve at
Cap
2.3
reserve
million.
account.
He thinks it's
Right.
gonna take all
because
of
the
it.
roof is $700,000-800,000, and mechanical works $350,000.
So it's 1.2, say.
And then the HVAC is probably another $400,000 or $500,000.
They were close to 2.
And then this over there was probably
$1 million
another
one,
half.
let's say 3 million.
Yeah.
For East Pike.
I mean, I have that
Well, then you're in
worksheet
negative.
that,
On the damn page.
All right, so if we're gonna be generous, we'll put the cap reserve just as a negative 100,000.
Yeah.
You see what I'm doing?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so, I mean, when I plug it in this way, and I'm not really paying attention too much right now to anything beyond 23, 24. I'm not. It seems to me that we could reserve $1 million.
and I do correct me, there is in 23, 22, 23, there is $1 million in that budget to transfer to capital reserve.
How much
Already.
more, already? Okay, well, how much more do you think we could go?
My
Safely,
personal opinion is none.
but you're very conservative. Give me a better number.
I am, but I would hope it's not an $8 million. I'm not being that conservative where in 3
Could
or
you go
4
to
years.
1.3?
And I think we have time over the next couple of years to make those decisions.
Yeah, we have money in capital reserve. We have money in that.
You don't have to transfer everything next year that you're going to.
No, not everything, but we gotta, you've already transferred $1 million for next year. I'd like to take it up a little bit, just a
well-
little bit,
But there's also nothing,
because it's the discipline of it.
you can transfer something this year as well, which is not in the current projections
Okay,
or
that was what I
estimates,
was,
which,
so,
we're already, my projection for this year is to end at 446,000 to the good, which is still being somewhat conservative. So my hope is that that number grows a little bit, and then you could vote this year to transfer money as well.
how much?
I don't know that until we
No,
close.
no. Is it possible for us to transfer a negative number? So we could transfer, if you end up at 500,000 to the good, can we transfer $1 million? Or
You
can we
could,
only
yeah,
transfer
as long as you're not
500?
As long as you're not going over the total budgeted
If
expenditure.
he's at 500 now or 446, and we end up at 800, we could still transfer $1 million.
This year?
This year, and then we have in the current budget another $1 million to transfer.
Yes.
Now, we also have to pay attention to all the other capital needs across the
Well,
district.
yeah.
So we need
Well, just
400,000 for that, just
So-
off the top.
So Jared, we reserved $750,000 4 or 5 years ago or 6 years ago, whatever it was, as a cushion on the Peasers primarily. Okay. We were able, through your work and Dale's work, we were able to basically get through the worst part of the Peasers without having to use that. My question to the board then is, does it make sense to unobligate that $750,000 from that Peasers and move it over into the capital? Okay, if you're concerned about not wanting to move more than $1 million, okay, out of the general fund balance, does it make sense to unobligate that 750 and then in addition to the $1 million, move it over? Because I would argue that we're probably not going to need it for the Peasers based on the fact that we're kind of at that more or less the top, or at least the delta, the slope of the line has been reduced considerably.
So you're saying we're over reserved right now?
On
Hypothetically.
on the Peasers.
Yeah,
We were
well,
afraid-
that's still-
we were afraid that the Peasers were going to show up on a Thursday with $1 million bump. and we were able to, using general funds, keep up with the Peasers without tapping into the 750. Now, we also put money aside for the football field replacement, I believe. That we also
I don't think we
replaced.
obligated it formally.
Is that not true?
You did
What,
nothing
you
for
mean
the
the turf?
football
Okay,
field.
okay, so we're just talking about the Peasers. So the Peasers went up and we were able to keep up with it without massive problems.
My point is that on Friday, I'm not expecting another $1 million hit like we
Right.
were before.
Right.
So then if we were to unobligate that
We're re-obligated.
or re-obligate it, then would that make you nervous if we're gonna go ahead and move it back over to capital projects instead of Peasers?
I mean, I'll be honest with you, when I look at that 750, I just always consider it part of the overall fund balance. I don't look at
Yeah, I
it
do
as a
too.
separate amount.
I see it that way too.
No, but it does have an impact on whether or not we can raise taxes based on.
It does, and that's really why it was
Please
reserved and
clarify what
committed
you
it.
just said, okay? Because I look at this and I see $8.1 million in fund balance and 750 in another fund balance. But is the 750 part of the 8.1?
It's part of your overall, no, it's not part of the 8.1.
Okay, so it's
Where do
actually
you have it?
8.1 plus 750. Is cash.
When you say 8.1, where are you seeing
I was looking
8.1?
at the 21,
carry.
22 estimate.
Yes, that's the carryover fund balance from
Yeah, we can use 8.6. I'll be
Yeah,
happy to use 8.6. Let's
Like-
use 8.6.
the 2021 year ended with 8.1 in fund balance. 7.5 of that was unassigned, 750 was committed.
Okay, so that's, the 750 is part of that fund balance.
750 is part
Okay,
of
I
that.
understand now.
Yes.
It's not additional money.
No, it's part of your overall fund balance.
But the history of it was to be within that fund balance is the cushion on Peasers.
Right.
That's what it was reserved for.
So you could argue that we're a little over-reserved on the fund balance.
I would say this current year, but
But I get that you want to take us out because that's where your projections are taking us, but we couldn't have predicted COVID 2 years ago. We couldn't have predicted a war. You know, I mean, so these projections are, that's all I'm saying. And I'm trying to figure out,
It's not Jared, it's the bigger history of the
yes.
world or the area that's driving that issue, not his
Oh,
not
yeah,
his
no,
work.
according to your projections and what you're putting in, you're absolutely correct, I'm sure, but I'm just not so sure it's gonna mirror reality.
yeah, I mean, I really
Exactly,
hope it
exactly,
doesn't
it
do it without, these projections certainly do not show any type of tax increase, minimal increases in basic and special ed, all of those.
Do we have an opportunity to refinance a bond next year, is that correct?
This year.
This year,
This year.
It would be late in
Late this
22
year.
to 23. It'd be like next.
Depends on what the Fed does, though.
well, I mean, the central bank is saying they're gonna go up a half a point this next meeting, and I don't know, they're saying inflation's gonna come down again because who knows? But I'm not trying to upset, I'm just throwing an idea on the table. Would we also consider keeping the 750 in reserve and borrowing money at a rate that is still relatively affordable before rates go skyrocketing? Because eventually, if I'm adding these numbers up right, we're gonna have to borrow money.
Yeah, I threw that out several months ago.
Okay.
So
And I could see why there's opposition to doing that, because we're not spending it yet,
Oh, well, yeah, we're sitting here looking like money bags, but
Right.
but the problem is that,
Or not.
I think
well,
I
it's
think before we were to think about borrowing it, I think we need to basically have Jared kind of prepare using their 17 million as your guesstimate and put some ideas down on, well, we got 6 million left in the construction, and we've got this much, and we're gonna transfer this much this year and this much next year, and then say, okay, based on that, this is the delta, this is what we may need to borrow in order to make that happen. Okay, and then at least we have some justification for the money that you would actually want to go out and try to borrow to make this work, Joel.
yeah, no, I get that, but I want you to understand that it's a big difference paying,
No,
It's paying 8%
He doesn't have
versus
anything to do
4%.
tomorrow. He can whip that out in a half hour, right?
Well, to your point, sir, we've been reviewing that exact spreadsheet in buildings and grounds, audit and finance of capital. It's called capital improvement funding and potential projects. So we've been outlining what is in capital reserve, what is in capital projects,
Okay,
what are all the
Planned project.
projects that we have. We have estimates for them, and as of right now, we need $7 million to do that, and that was estimating Eisenhower at $12 million. So we can add another $4 million, $5 million onto
Yes,
that.
I agree. I think we know the number pretty much. Right
so then you're looking at about a $12 million
So it looks like-
borrow if you're going to do everything that needs to be done.
Or you cut back on your building projects.
No, you keep doing the building projects at $400,000 a year, like
What?
we've been doing.
You keep the building projects at what?
The maintenance projects at $400,000 a year.
Yeah.
Okay. And we're gonna need to borrow $6 to $7 million.
When? That's my point.
No,
My
no,
point
no,
is,
no,
I
no,
get
no.
that number
You tell me
too.
when.
Well,
We're gonna spend
2 years
that.
ago would have been the best time to borrow the money when it was under 1%.
Right, but now it's not.
But
But-
now it's not because
but
we didn't want to borrow any money.
But it's
Okay.
not going down. Okay, but now we have a reason to borrow the money.
Well, when you can borrow money that cheap, you just have it to have it.
Well, now we have a reason and it's not gonna get any
Now we
cheaper.
have a reason. It was now it's
Okay,
our
do we
rainy
go
day.
out and borrow the 7 million or the 6 million, whatever Jared figures out, but it's gonna be in that magnitude.
I agree. It's in that magnitude.
So, Julia, given that the feds are gonna raise,
At least
or
half.
projecting that they're gonna raise the rate, how much do you think the market will anticipate that?
I think it's baked in already.
Okay,
That's my opinion. I mean,
That-
reasonable minds can differ.
Do you have that bond spreadsheet? I thought, what's her name? Judy? What's Jamie?
Jamie.
Jamie. I thought she was saying like this fall, we should start that process. And then by January, we would be refinancing that next bond.
I think it's fall of 2023 is the next time, because we asked that question last time, and
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, I was thinking it was this year.
Even if you pay a
Because I think
penalty.
that was last year when they asked her.
well, they're only callable. I mean, you could.
So we have no right to,
But remember, I mean, that was borrowed back 5 years ago when interest rates were really even at historic lows. So, yes, we can refinance it, but
it may not be to the advantage.
it may not be at an advantage to
no,
do
I
that
know,
even now.
but yeah, but you're,
And we were sort of banking on that would save us some expenditure to
Okay,
borrow
so-
more money,
well, it's
So-
important this year so that we figure out what we reserve. And if we are going to borrow, we better start to think about it pretty seriously. It might not have to be right now, but we can't just continue to
I
talk
agree,
about
Julia.
these beautiful projects that we're gonna do, when in reality, we may be looking at, instead of having a $17 million new Eisenhower, you have a $12 million new Eisenhower. And I don't know how I'm not an architect, I don't know how you get there. We're talking about elevators now.
well,
Um,
with the scheme we chose.
No, we chose no elevator.
But we were.
Yeah, but, so what I'm hearing at this point, Julia, is that we probably need to talk to PFM and at least ask them to prepare the possible proposal on 7 million just as a
Well, I think instead of
placeholder.
picking a figure, I think we need to verify our estimates. We need to, and
But
then,
that would be roughly what we're looking at, in all likelihood,
Right.
roughly,
yeah,
give or take.
Tom said 6 or 7. I thought I heard 10 or 12 over here just a little bit ago. So
Well-
we need to figure out what that
Yeah.
number is.
Well, we're not
But
gonna
it
be able to figure
counts
out
towards
exactly
what we-
because I'm also including insurance payments in that, and we don't know what that's gonna be. So there's some fluctuation. Okay. I mean, we don't know, but it's gonna be in the 6, 7 range, maybe 8. But
We're
So-
inflating, though, we're not deflating. I mean, we're not.
So Jared, in this current, but to kind of bring us back to where we are here, in your current budget, there's nothing in there to service any additional debt should we have to borrow some money to finish Eisenhower. Is that correct?
There's not in these projections, no.
So we could do a new borrowing. Which
Yeah,
is
it would
hard,
add-
but to
those
go out on a
expenses are
$5
gone.
million or $7 million bond, she'd be like, no.
You're gonna have to do new borrowing. Those expenses just are not. Any new money borrowed is not, the expense to pay that off is not included in this budget projection right now.
What's the lowest amount she'd let us borrow at this point? I mean, you can't just borrow, well, you can add the $1 million if you tag on to a refinance, but just a brand new
I
borrow.
would,
you have
I would
to borrow
imagine
the
it'd be
tranche.
around,
The cheapest borrowing keeps you at $10 million a year.
That's what I thought.
And I can tell
if
you,
if you did less than 10, do you still get that cheapest borrowing or?
oh yeah, the going over 10 is where it gets more expensive. Anything under 10 is cheaper.
So then to Terry's point, if we get a better figure, then that would become the number that you'd want to look at borrowing, which in all probability would not exceed 10.
I would say so.
I
I
can
think
take,
it can.
you know, they've been voicing the concerns, but they're going to struggle to say continue to borrow at this point if you don't have a foreshore project in
We
hand.
have a for sure project. I mean,
I
what,
don't know
and
if
what
it
do we have to do,
disturbs
what do we have to do to convince the borrowers that we're gonna build something?
I'm not sure what that is. They've
Okay,
had
yeah,
this,
well, well,
we borrowed money.
Identify what that is and then we'll do it.
We borrowed in 2016 thinking we had a foreshore project, and that's what they're going to say. You've had this money for that many years.
So what does it take? I think that's a question, Tom is absolutely right.
Absolutely.
Ask them at what point in the process that we're in now would it take for them to approve that additional funding? Is it a signed contract with the contractor to build it? Is it a approval of a final design by the
You
architect
could
and the
also
board?
have deflation.
Just what is the trigger point that would make them happy and still give us our typical AAA rated, what have you?
I can ask, yeah.
Because this is a legal question, not a architectural question, Tom. Okay,
And we'd love to get to that point where we could commit the district and the bank that we're gonna do this project so that we actually don't get a pushback about not doing the project.
now, and that this affects then, as I understand our discussion here, on how much money we're actually wanting to move out of the reserve, how quickly.
Do we
Now,
have to?
without totally speaking for Jared, though, I think what you were suggesting was if you did $1 million this year, by the time we get into next year at this time, we could still do $1 million from next year. So you could move that 2 million that you were talking about because of the way the project's going to be phased. You don't need that full 2 million moved over there right now. You could take $1 million this year and $1 million next year to still get your 2 million.
And $1 million.
Is that correct?
And $1 million the third year.
Oh, wait, but it's correct for 2 years. I mean, it's correct from this year,
Yeah, I mean, next year, basically at this point in the year, we'll hopefully be out to bid. We'll have maybe actual real numbers. And you can make a decision then as to how much you want to move or need to move from your current fund balance. And we'll have a better idea of where we end this year, where we're going to end next year.
you're not talking about moving this year. You were talking in this budget about moving next.
I think you can move some this year.
How, okay, how,
When we know the numbers, or
June
could
30th, or
commit
would
it.
you know in May?
this number's probably not gonna change a whole lot in a month. But you can make that decision, you can make it June 30th, you can make it, in the past 2 years, we've made it in October as to how much you wanted to move.
I'm sorry. For the year we're in, you can move it in October?
Yes, we've done it the past 2 years.
Our year goes October.
But I'm just wondering if there's a benefit.
No, this October of 2022, you could make a decision how much you wanted to move in the 21-22 budget.
Remember, Tom,
When we get the final numbers in.
you're dealing with accountants, not architects.
I know.
Okay,
So, but
like when you
our
declare
year
your
is
interest.
October,
no, our year is June,
June.
June the 3rd.
Now you get.
But we can
discounted.
retroactively move money and. we go
up
back
to
June.
October.
If
We've
I-
done it the
if-
past 2 years.
If I do that, my accountant just goes nuts.
You don't have the law.
We don't do tax returns as a school district.
That's what consumer discount companies do.
What's that?
They to borrow gets the, that's what consumer discount
Okay.
companies do, so. It's called discounting loans.
Okay, so then I think you know what you need to do at this point in time as far as trying to figure out what that capital budget
But
for construction.
I
needs to
just
be.
want to know what you think, I want you to give us an idea of what you think on September 1st we can move. Or October 1st,
I mean,
or
For
August
this year,
1st
for
of this year.
Julia, I think he's saying $1 million to be on the safe side.
I would say you can, I mean, you're not gonna go over this year's budget even by, I think, moving $1 million. So I think in 21,
1.3,
22,
1.3, 1.4.
based on these projections, you can move upwards of 1.5 if you wanted to and not go over budget.
Thank you.
I'm just, my concern is going into the future. If you're gonna move 1.5 this year and 1 million next year,
No new revenue?
And I think too, a frank discussion too is my whole thought process with Eisenhower was not to build the Lincoln or Cadillac, but it surely wasn't to build the Chevette or the Pinto.
That was my first thought. I'll take it back.
I understand that. It was a.
And the Chevette.
Mine was a Pinto.
All right.
So,
Well, the Chevette owners look down at the Pinto owners.
yeah.
They were great cars this year.
So,
What I'm getting at is, I'm really not in that favor of cutting it to a Chevette or a Pinto. I think we have to take a stand and say, we're not building the luxury, but we're not gonna skin it back to,
so right now, Jared's budget is with no tax increase, which is as we asked him to prepare for us. I would assume, Jared, that one of your reasons you're reluctant to move any more than that million or $1.5 million is because if we don't raise the taxes, what might happen
Yes.
through this next year. Okay, and what I'm kind of hearing you say, at least I'm reading between the lines, is that we're only gonna move $1 million or $1.5 million without raising taxes that you'd be comfortable with. But if there was some additional revenues in the form of tax increase, then there might be more money that could be moved. Is that a correct assumption?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, and I know, there's that possible revenue. There's also, the governor had his budget proposal in February and he proposed huge increases to public ed. I haven't really been hearing much out of,
I don't think you're gonna get that.
what's included in this budget now is, the governor for Indiana proposed almost a $2 million increase in basic ed for Indiana. This budget, to try and be conservative, because typically what a governor proposes and what we actually get is about a fourth of it. So I only put $500,000 into this budget projection for basic ed increase. He proposed $300,000 for special ed. I only put $50,000. So those numbers, if the governor would happen to get his budget, that would be a huge difference in what this projection looks like going into the future.
But there are many more projects that extra revenue can go towards, like fixing our schools.
There's also, the other area that I tried to be conservative of, is because we've heard it many, many years, many, many times, is charter school reform, which could save us money. And they were proposing $350,000.
Madam Vice President could be more right.
They're not gonna do it.
They're not.
No, and that there's
They
no,
never were gonna do
the
it.
projection in
She
here
could be
does
more
not have any of that savings in it at
They
all.
could care
Yeah,
less.
but your projection has substantial utility cost increases.
Yes.
There's only upside, there's only downside, not upside.
So,
I mean,
so if we wanted, if we wanted to move more money into the capital project without, if we wanted to move more money into the capital projects or the construction project for what we're trying to do at Eisenhower, what level of taxes would you be looking at to make you, what's that sweet spot in any tax increase with the additional monies you'd want to move?
I think, Mike and I talked last week. I think we were looking at possibly a 2% increase. Our index this year is 4.3, which I don't know that we'd recommend that
We
large of an increase in any one year. So we were recommending a 2% increase just to help with those kind of things, but also, we have other increasing costs across the board for other things as well. But
What is the 2% increase? How much more revenue? does
That
it
bring us
generate?
$1 million?
it would bring us probably right around 600,000 or 700,000, depending on collections.
And the reason why we made that decision was because of the decision regarding Ike. We think if you want to support the buildings, there's extra revenue needed for that, because you've been incredible. And I know I say this a lot, but the board does not give themselves enough credit for the last 5 years, what you've done. But it's getting more
Well,
incredibly difficult.
Yeah, but
I
if you
think-
don't reserve the full amount that we're talking about, you don't have to raise the taxes this year.
I think, but to your point, Julia, of trying to borrow some money sooner than later, I think one of the things that we should certainly look at, because it will have an impact when we borrow it on our bond payment schedule of 20 grand, 100 grand, 200 grand, whatever it is. I think the one thing that we should look at as we're preparing the budget, if we've got to borrow this X amount of dollars, 6 or 7, whatever it is, that we at least include enough money in the budget to cover that cost.
We
But
want to
that
see what
borrowing.
it-
But the
I'd put
cost,
it in at 4%.
the cost on the borrowing is interest, basically interest only until it's backloaded.
No, I understand that, Tom,
But
but
the cost is gonna be $100,000 to borrow $1 million. No, I'm sorry, to borrow $6 million. I'm making up numbers here, but they'll keep our bond payments the same and just extend out the bond payment at the end.
no, don't you have to add a certain amount of cash each year to cover that?
You have to usually make small bond, like I'm talking $5,000, $1,000 in bond payments, but your debt can never be increasing. It has to be decreasing over time. But to Tom's point, in 5 years, our bond payments drop from 3.2 to 2.6 because we're seeing the end of this older debt falling off. And that really came out during the last refinancing we did. So
So if we do a bond payment, the first 5 years are going to be tiny increases. And
So-
then in year 6, we're gonna pay $3 million if we keep it level.
So the question then, Jared, is if we were to borrow this additional 6 to 7 shortfall in Eisenhower, what would the impact be on the budget? Would it be 10,000 that we just kind of eat, or is it 150 that we've got a budget for?
you would have to add probably anywhere to, I would say, $100,000 to $200,000 because you got to pay interest. Like the actual principal payment is small, but you have to pay full interest on it. So you would be adding to that yearly expenditure number, depending on when that borrowing would kick in, probably anywhere to $100,000 to $200,000 a year in expense.
That's what I'm saying. So what prime rate right now is 3.5. Right now, Fed meets.
Do we pay over the
Our
prime
risk is escalating. That's all I'm saying.
Tom asked a question, Joel, I didn't.
But
rate? We will pay over the prime rate? Or will we pay under the prime rate?
we've never been AAA. We're always A. I think we're lucky based on our. It's just stuff we've learned with these grants where our county fits into the federal scheme on the ARCs and stuff.
You have that spreadsheet,
We're second
the bond.
tier to the
Or is
bottom
it
of this
in here?
county.
There's a bond spreadsheet
So
in
they're
here
gonna
that
charge
shows
us.
how our debt goes out.
Yeah,
So I do.
But I have that one. That one was updated.
I
at the
think
last
it
bond
boils down
refinancing.
to more information in the next 2 weeks about what projections would look like, what Jamie has to say. She doesn't have a magic crystal ball to figure out what it's gonna be in a year.
closer.
but you're sure that bond doesn't?
Yeah, we
fall?
double checked the last time. Yep,
Okay.
it's in 2023. the year 2023.
Yeah.
You can't make an early, they call it, some borrowers can prepay early without penalty.
I mean, I can ask her.
Well, I'd like to know if there'd be a penalty if we So I'm very comfortable then, based on what you've said, with keeping the numbers the way you have it already fixed in at the million for this coming budget process. And then we decide we still have time to decide what we want to do.
Up through October, if you want
Yeah,
to put
if you wanna
another
go
half
that
million
long.
in or whatever.
I just think that just everything escalates so much faster than it did 3 years ago. That this is our rate, the risk is that I said that from the beginning. My point, and I think you've made it too, is just the borrowing, the whole key here is what you pay to what does money gonna cost you?
Would you be against if I would see if Jamie even virtually could attend our next Audit and Finance Committee meeting to talk to us about
Yeah,
borrowing?
I would like to, but I want you to have a pretty good idea of what she's gonna say, so you can tell us beforehand, so that we're prepared to ask her. Instead of going through listening to her whole thing, just be able to ask her questions to save some.
I can have her prepare something to give to the board ahead of time.
Yeah. Okay. Are you okay? Cinda and Terry, are you okay with what we've got on the table right now? What he's put up as for the.
It doesn't hurt to look.
Yeah, well, yeah, I know that, but I mean, as of tonight,
Yeah, the
we're
million
at a
now
million.
Yeah.
Are you okay at a million?
for the transfer.
Yeah, at least a million.
Yeah, it would be nice to do more, but it's coming down to.
Yeah, I'd like to maximize the transfer when we can, and if we can't, we can't.
Yeah, I agree. I think, Cindy, you're saying we ought to do 1.5 million if we can?
So,
That's fine.
so the other question is, as far as the general budget is, whether or not we look at any kind of that 2% tax increase or not.
I think we run the numbers. Yeah, I think we have to. I think that we have to put everything on the table now.
At least run the numbers.
At least run the numbers, including Jamie's, including the tax increase put in at 2%. You know, we can't get all excited and be like, this doesn't mean you're gonna raise taxes. It's not what it's doing. It's exploring the options. And I'd like to have more than 2 options on the
Do
table.
we have
I'd like
time to do that? Between now and when we have to vote?
On May, I believe it's May 11th,
When's our next audit final?
is not until May 23rd. Now, the preliminary budget is just really the budget that is approved, that is advertised to the public. It doesn't set the tax rate. You set that when you approve your final budget, which we have scheduled for
No, but-
June 13th.
No, but from just a common courtesy to the taxpayer, you can't not have, if you're seriously thinking, if the board is seriously considering a tax increase, it has to be in that May budget.
Yeah. that's
You
what I'm
can't
thinking.
wait till the end of June and just say, oh, by the way,
We could always flip if Mr. Harley's okay with it, his committee, to Madam Vice President, to get her sooner. I mean, we can always do things like that if you wanted time to talk about it.
One, you could let Julie go first and then put my committee behind her.
Yes, sir, we could.
Then you can leave early.
Wow. I mean, everything's sort of lined up, what was that guy's name, the chair of Central Bank, famous, Paul Volcker. 1976, war was going on in Vietnam, you had the oil prices rising, interest rates hit, what was the high?
21%.
21, 22%?
That was-
I mean,
that was
I don't
part
think
of
it's
yours.
out of the question, but you also had, I think, the tricky part is, I also think we had deflationary pressures the whole time since 2009. They would, you couldn't make anything on a CD for years. Couldn't save any money if you were just a traditional saver through a bank. We're lucky to
Cinda,
have FDIC insurance.
You kind of wanted to say something, I think.
I think that, number one, we've got a huge building project we have to do. We're going to end up borrowing money for it. There's no way it's gonna be,
It looks that
it's just, there's no way.
Sure looks.
That's
like it.
number one. Number two, we all know we've got a teacher contract coming up. And the public needs to know that there's a teacher contract coming up, and that's gonna be more money. So not only are we going to end up borrowing money, we are going to end up raising taxes. And if we can wiggle and squirm and maybe not do it this year, I think that's all spin. I think they take the Band-Aid off. If you're gonna do it, you're gonna do it, because it's inevitable. It's inevitable. So it's just,
I don't see it as inevitable. I see everything as timing. And we can't predict that far in the future, but I do think it is definitely possible to have another year of no tax increases. I'm sorry. I think that, Mike, I'm sorry. I think it's
I don't think
possible we
so.
can do it, but it depends on how we handle what we've got right now, particularly in the general fund. And what's interesting to me is that we threw out this $750,000 reserve. It's a lot of money. Can we put it to better use than just sitting around looking at it year after year? I mean, we have to start making our money work better for us right now. It's not, I don't think it's quite, I mean, I can be gloomy too, but I also don't know the history of the country is that we survive.
So that 750,000 you're saying we could use as bond payment,
That's exactly what I'm
But-
saying.
that's gonna be less of a increase in our reserve each year, you know, which we've been banking on.
Yeah, but I'm okay if the reserve goes down.
I am
And,
too.
and then I'm forced to consider raising taxes. I have a hard time raising taxes when the reserve has gone up.
When you've got this kind of reserve, yeah.
Well,
I mean,
but
yeah,
and it
I am
continues-
too.
And it
It's not
continues
fair.
gone up through black magic, Mike. Okay, I don't know how you've been doing it. Okay, but I would have an easier time, you know, if even this year the reserve dropped down, and then we can.
Well, the only, correct me if I'm wrong, Jared, but the only way we can do a tax increase is if the fund balance is below 8% that has not been committed.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and so
Which is
8% of
We're
60
way
million.
over.
We're
At
over.
8%,
We got a problem.
8% of a $60 million budget, just for quick back of the envelope math, is 4.8 million. Correct? So if we had a
You're
$60 million budget,
6,
8% of that would be 48,
So if
4.8
if
million.
we're going to raise taxes this year, we need to move.
But it's based on,
Over.
it's based on,
To make more
yeah, I
money.
mean, that's the ultimate goal where you need, but like where PDE looks at it is they're looking at this budget projection and they're saying, okay, well, Indiana at the end of 22-23 is gonna have a fund balance of this, which this projection is showing 5.
But this never holds.
I know, but I'm just saying, that's what they're looking at. They don't care what
They're showing
they don't care what the
5.
end number is.
They're showing 5.8,
It's still over
which is still $1 million.
And you could, as part of your budget, you could, we could show them that our estimated ending balance, if we want to actually put in a number there for a transfer, say $1 million or 1.5, which would decrease that ending fund balance into next year as well. So you can do things like that to bring that ending fund balance for 22-23 down to a point where they can say you can raise taxes. If that's the question.
My point is that we, in order to seriously consider the tax increase, you've got to do something with that fund balance that's officially on the books, whether it's actual or it's projected, and knock it down $1 million or more to get within that range to actually do that.
Right.
problem with
Okay.
that fund balance is it's an imaginary amount of money that's going to be spent on that building project. And we're going to have to come up with that money one way or another. Borrow money, yes. Raise taxes, yes. All of our other expenses and the building project, we're going to end up doing it.
Well, wait a
I'm
minute
talking
now.
more about procedural though, Cinda, we can't even consider this tax increase that you're talking about unless we're also either willing at the same time or beforehand to move money around to reflect that.
And a new board could come in and stop this project. There's no guarantee that you're gonna get a new Eisenhower, the way we're moving.
Well, that's another issue. Let's get moving.
Well,
You know, that's-
you've got 50
We're-
parties working on this.
We're making progress. We're
Well-
making a lot more progress than we did on any other project that we've tried to do.
But a new board's, well,
Yeah.
I'm not so, there is real money in the general fund. It's there. And I personally have a hard time looking at the taxpayer. I mean, they haven't ponied up more than what it was 5 years ago for 5 years. And I've been very happy saving money, knowing that eventually you've got to just happy sitting on cash because we got to improve these buildings. We started with this building. Ben Franklin looms, the great monster looms. So
Let's call on Sue and Jim. June,
I will in
maybe.
a second.
Okay.
But my point is that there is a sweet spot here right now. 3.5% prime lending rate. It's not as sweet as it was 2 years ago. Not is what it went to in 2008 or 9, but that's water under the bridge now. So it's worth thinking about both raising the taxes and taking the 750 to perhaps pay for debt. It's worth both at the same time to look at them both. Am I making sense?
I like your idea, Bud. I think we need like 3 options,
Yeah, I'd like.
written down in black and white, you know. And then I'm gonna throw out, we're probably gonna have to have a special workshop. Because
Yeah.
he has to get the number of rooms and everything at Eisenhower figured out May 2nd. You probably have a full agenda at your policy and personnel coming up.
Do we want to reschedule another?
She's okay.
Could we change that one?
We could
When's
change
that one? The week after?
It's the night of the
Yeah,
board
the week
meeting.
after.
Yeah,
Tonight,
that'd be
board
what-
meeting.
Is that the 11th?
Next
Or
one.
That'd be the
Okay,
9th.
so we have 2 questions out here to have. Jim, I don't know who put their hand up first. Go ahead.
They didn't put their hand up, but I thought they should weigh in, Jewel.
Oh, you just want them to weigh in. Okay, we're on the spot now. Sue, what do you think?
Well, personally, I'm learning a lot through this meeting. This is the first time I've really dug into the budget, and I do like the idea of some type of a budget workshop for us with some information, some options, some choices. Because like I said, this is all new to me, so I need to hear more. I need to see more.
Okay.
And I thank Jared for all the work that you've done in preparing this. It really
We are,
helped me.
we are sort of in a budget, this is kind of a budget workshop tonight, Sue. So what you're saying is we need some additional time in another workshop.
We need the options.
We need the options. I agree,
Options.
with you, but we're coming down to certain variables that we're going to plug in. So if there's another third pathway on the table, we need to kind of figure it out tonight because so we know we could borrow. We really wanted to. If we had to, we would. If we had to. We understand that we also have to, we're talking about this ability or inability one way or the other to raise taxes in terms of what we reserve. And then the other thing is that we actually have had in the general fund, which I call a reserve fund, unrestricted reserve fund, $750,000. It's been in there for some years that we put in as a cushions to pay in these really high teacher pension rates. So we do have options, and I just want to make sure that we hone in on the variables because I really do want another workshop.
To me, we have 4 options. We have no tax
No
increase,
tax increase.
then we have an option with a tax increase, then we have an option with borrowing money, then we have an option with tax increase and borrowing money.
Well, I guess you could look at it that way.
That's the 4
Well-
options.
Jim, you want to weigh in?
Well, yeah, I think the borrowing money option, I don't know that we make an Eisenhower school that kids can actually get into without borrowing money. I don't see, you can't raise taxes. He said that raises the 2% would get you $600,000. That builds what, 4 classrooms? We we're gonna need to borrow the money. So that's really that any option that doesn't include borrowing money, and I kind of agree with Julia, sooner than later, it makes sense. It is very, very hard to swallow raising taxes at the same time we're sitting on all this money. I understand it might be necessary in the future, but I don't think this is the year. I think we have time before that hammer has to be dropped. And if we do a tax increase the same year as this, the school projects getting off the ground and the teacher contracts, none of us are getting reelected. That's just the facts. That looks terrible. We're spending all this money and then we're going to say, okay, you guys get to pay for it. It doesn't matter what last 5 years, what we did. Nobody's going to care. They're going to see a bunch of teachers who make a lot of money and a school district spending more money than they have because they're borrowing money and then asking the community for more. I don't know that we get away with that.
You
My
can
opinion.
get away with it though, because what you're doing with part of that money is repairing a building that burned down. So the taking care of the building that burned down and the buildings that have not been maintained for a long time is going to be easier for the taxpayers to swallow than a huge teacher raise.
Well, I can appreciate that part of the argument, but the average person who, used to work at Krause's and then it closed and then it reopened and then it closed, been fired from 3 other jobs, they're not going to care.
So, so the question is, you're good with another workshop on this, Jim? Is that correct?
Well, I think we have to have continual conversations. I like the idea of having black and white concrete options in front of us so we can actually, we all have ballpark numbers in our heads right now. Anything more concrete is always welcome.
So Julia, you were normally scheduled for the last Friday or the last Monday of April. And we had this meeting, number one, to accelerate this process with the potential option of not doing your meeting in 2 weeks from tonight.
Is it 2 weeks? No, it's
It's
1 week.
one, it's 1 week. Okay, I'm
So we're
sorry.
not going to have the
Okay,
meeting next
so-
week,
so-
and then we could have a workshop
so-
the following.
So the question is if we're going to keep the Eisenhower project on schedule with Tom's work on that committee in 2 weeks, do we want to go ahead and set up for your meeting next Monday night?
Yeah.
Do you have time?
He's not doing anything else that's important. You filed your taxes. I mean, what?
No, but
Why can't we have a
Seriously,
Wednesday
Jerry,
night
do you have,
and just have our meeting?
I probably can get it done. I mean, I have to deal
What
with some
about-
family issues this week.
No,
but-
I don't think that's fair to spring
all right, so then let me ask this. We'll put Mike on the spot, okay? Would you be prepared for the academic next Monday night and we just swap Julia and Tom out?
No. Sure.
You know, I mean, it's a serious question. Can you or not?
Wait, so you're asking if we can have academic meeting next week?
Yes.
So academic is the 25th and then
I'm not sure social studies.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. It depends. I mean, sure, we can have a meeting.
Well,
Like,
no,
we just
no,
meet
But the more
but
important
I
thing
set the
for it
agenda.
is
Just
the
whatever we have
votes
ready to
for
talk.
Eisenhower.
I'm just exploring ideas, okay, to try to keep.
Yeah.
Yeah, but an hour is not going to be enough time. So I would have to go again.
Well, we can't continue. If we're going to have a budget workshop, I want 2 hours. 2 hours.
What about next Wednesday though?
That's what I'm saying. Why can't we ever why can't Audit and Finance just have like a night?
Is
We can do
that-
next one.
Next
That's
Wednesday.
2 extra days.
Wednesday or
or-
Thursday, one or the other.
Would that
not
work?
Thursday, that's
Yeah, I
the
can make
Aaron.
some phone calls this week and
Dan.
work on some stuff, but
Wednesday's open.
That gives you 2 more days.
yeah, I mean, I'll make it happen either way.
Or Thursday.
Oh, she said
No, we
that's
have an
Aaron.
Aaron convention.
Thursday.
You get to go to Flint City, right?
Free report.
If you've got a van, you could all go and have a meeting on the way.
What about Wednesday?
Yeah, live
So
streaming it
we
in the
go
van.
over your understanding of what the agenda is going to be, because it's pretty clear in my head, but I don't necessarily want to go about it with these are the 4 options and work it out. What I want to do is I want to report back on what Jamie said, please.
I mean, I would like Jamie to be there. I
Well-
can get information ahead of time, but there's a lot of times we have these meetings and there's questions
Yeah.
and I can't answer it.
Can
So
she
we
send somebody else if she
That's
can't
what she's
make?
suggesting, yes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
But I'll ask, I mean, there's a lot of times
Yeah,
questions come up in the
yeah.
meetings where she's here, she can answer them.
For 2
Yeah,
extra
she can
days
come
to
online. I mean,
prepare.
it's better in a budget workshop if everybody shows up and then we don't have like dissonance between like hearing everything, but so make an effort, because I think it's an important meeting.
So if you're proposing next Wednesday, Cinda, is that doable on your calendar?
Yep.
Tom, is that doable on yours?
No,
What does do?
no, it doesn't matter. You guys go ahead.
What about the following Wednesday,
I'll catch up.
Problem is that,
May 4th?
problem is that, well, is that enough time?
So,
That would give Sarah the
so,
whole.
so,
Yeah,
It-
it gives him more time, but the
So-
problem is.
so to further enlighten Sue, and Jim, we have to advertise the preliminary budget 30 days before we approve the final budget in June. So theoretically, we were going to approve that on May the 11th, or whatever that first
May
meeting-
9th.
9th.
May 9th is. We don't have to approve it on May the 9th, as long as we approve it prior to the last meeting in June. My point is, when you suggest moving it not to this coming Wednesday, but the following Wednesday, we still have another couple weeks after that to actually try to hammer out whatever other details we have and still get this thing passed within the legal limits of the towards the end of May. Then it would maybe need a special meeting, because I think we only have one meeting in May scheduled.
So May 4th, what's that look like for everybody? That's a Wednesday night.
Sue or Jim?
I'm not going to be able to make any Wednesdays. I already moved my schedule, so I'm off every Monday, and I worked every Wednesday for the last year.
How about the 5th?
Is that ditto for Thursday as well?
Likely, I'd have to check.
Sue, what about you?
I'll have to look at my work calendar. There's so many things these next 3 weeks before commencement.
I know, it's tough.
I mean, Monday nights I keep open. I'm like Jim for this, but I have other.
So do we want to do a survey monkey and have the whole board chime in
Yeah,
in the next 24 hours or whatever?
But if they're saying Monday and
We
not
have
the
to do
other
it
4
on a
days,
Monday.
I don't know why you do a survey. We got to do it on a Monday.
What if we were to start the budget workshop are we gonna have to that's a board meeting night. Do we have to have an executive session? Are you planning on one?
What day? 25th?
The 9th?
Yeah, most likely. The 25th, we were going to cancel. 25th wide open. I don't know, Jared. Yeah,
That's a week.
yeah.
That's only a week to get it done.
I mean, I can,
Wednesday, did
I know.
Buchart Horn say when they're going to be able to get us some updated numbers? He said that they were going to look at the 14 million and the 19 million and have his pricing people kind of update it, because that was a real ballpark.
Everything's 2 weeks away.
I
Okay.
personally think we can afford a $12 million. That's my number. No.
So Sue, you're on the academic, but Jim, you're not. Is that correct?
Take out $2 million.
That's correct for me.
Yeah, he's not on the-
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so why don't we have have May, what is the academic meeting
May
schedule?
2nd.
May 2nd.
So why don't we have the budget workshop on May the 2nd? And then we
Instead of academic?
instead of academic, and then if you need more time, we maybe schedule it for that Wednesday. And I'm just throwing Wednesday out as a,
I can't do Wednesdays.
okay, then a Thursday.
I can do Thursdays, but Sue can't.
Why don't you just?
No.
Why not do
Why don't you just
next
make-
Monday, do the academic?
Or why don't you just make the
Well-
flop with Julia's committee?
Hold on, I mean, I could do Monday
Yeah,
academic things, not billing stuff.
just swap with my committee and then I go on.
Well, no,
We have a full schedule without doing a damn thing on the building.
Tom,
Well,
the issue I think that Rob raised was whether or not civics would be ready.
I understand,
So,
so this is never
do-
gonna be ready.
So do we have to, so not being sarcastic here, but do we have to make a decision at this academic meeting in May on the civics, or can it be pushed off till June's?
We
we
can,
gotta look at priorities here, for goodness sakes, the budget's
That's,
pretty
yes,
important.
that's
Yeah,
exactly
yeah.
where I'm going with that. Julie.
absolutely, we can,
Okay,
yeah.
so
just
flip the budget into my slot on the, and I'll do academic. We can do the,
Okay, so,
if you don't have enough stuff to fill up the hour, I'm sure you and I can figure out what to do with the building.
Yeah, I think it was respectfully, I prioritize. I think I can't do my job until you guys make some of these decisions. So I'd respectfully just say flip the two, whatever we have, we can do at late May or see where we're at, because the real big thing is going to be hiring, but that's going to be at Cinda's committee in June. We're not going to do anything in May
We're gonna do all the interviews.
because we have to do all interviews. I would say I would just flop Mr. Harley's committee with Madam Vice Presidents, flip them
so
And
we're
then
May
give you
second.
the extra time to get
if
that
the
done.
board would agree. That's what I
Yeah,
would
we
recommend.
agree.
And I don't object to putting, me take the hour next Monday, but also I could go after Julie's committee. Especially if Burkett Horn has something to talk.
I don't think that's fair.
Well, we could,
We're always
maybe,
getting shoved in with some other committee, because
Well-
academic committee is so important.
yeah, I think he said, no, I think what he's saying is we have nothing. I was trying to do everything I can to cancel next Monday. So we're kind of fully.
So we're
Clean.
going May second.
Yeah, so what he's saying is, if you want to, keep you at May 2nd, but maybe he'll take the April 25th slot if we want to discuss the rooms at least, is what Mr. Harley's saying.
No, I was saying, no, that's exactly what I was saying. I could take the canceled slot on the 25th.
Thank you.
And then Julie could have my slot on the 2nd.
Yep.
And I could go after her I could go after her if I have to.
Yep, or I can, yep.
Well, you know you'll have
Into
to.
May.
I know I have to, but I'm okay with going to 10 o'clock. And
What if we want to go to 10 o'clock?
then I won't, then I'll
Then go to
cancel.
10 o'clock.
I think what I would do, I would make
Yep.
her committee
So-
on May
Okay,
2nd.
so we're
Let me
gonna
work with
start
Mr.
at
Harley,
5,
Jared,
5:30.
and
So-
Aaron about
Schedule your meeting for 2 hours.
So
Darn tooth.
this,
What? on the
Okay.
20
I'm-
when?
it's command decision time,
Oh, brother.
okay?
You can only appoint committees by yourself.
Well, we're trying to get everybody out of here at a reasonable time. Julia, you'll be on May the 2nd. Tom, you'll be on the next Monday. Whatever you get done with Mike and Terry and Aaron and whoever else is what we'll do then. And then we'll take a look at it to decide whether or not you dovetail at the end of Julia's after next Monday night's meeting.
We get 2 hours.
You get
We're not
two
gonna
hours.
be
You get as
told that
much
something-
time-
and Very
No.
important things come up.
No, you take whatever time
If you need
finance
3
you
hours, you
need.
take 3 hours.
So say it again, May 2nd is Julia,
5:30 to 7:30.
yeah.
Or 5:30 to question mark.
I just
Okay.
put the start time, I don't care when it ends. Now, when's Tom?
His will be next week.
25th, April 25th, 5:30.
Okay, so we're making that, we're not having that day off then,
It appears that way.
all right.
But we're not necessarily gonna have a board meeting that night, correct?
That's also correct.
Shouldn't be.
Yeah,
Well,
it
I
looks
can
like it's just,
cancel-
we're
I
gonna
can cancel-
focus.
Whoa.
I can
If you
cancel
don't
the
have
board
the board meeting, if you don't have the board meeting, then I can do the 2 hours.
Right.
Yes.
Oh, aren't you nice?
So our board meeting next
So I
week.
can cancel that board meeting.
Yes, well, I would
25th.
recommend that.
Command decision, please.
No, the question really is yours,
All right. I'm
Mike, because
canceling.
is
Cancel
there
it.
anything that you've got that we need to decide next week?
In all fair defense to the administration, we've been working for the last 4 weeks to canceling Monday's meeting.
Okay, so then we'll just do a straight swap. And Tom, you can take as much time next week as you need.
But it is a discipline to get through meetings efficiently. It is a discipline.
And you're very
All right.
good.
Okay, is everybody good with that?
I'll work on the agenda tomorrow.
Gary?
Get it out there.
Sue and Jim, are you guys good with that?
Yes.
Do it tomorrow.
Sounds good.
So we're not gonna do the 4 options.
Well, we know that there's 4 options on the table, but I think the first hour is gonna be to looking, we'll spend an hour probably looking at the research you've come up with, at your various projections on the reserve and on whatever you have on Eisenhower, and then from Jamie, right? And then we talk, and then we can make the combinations that we think is best at that time, but there's 4 combinations on the table of variables.
So let me ask you a kind of a technical question, Jared. In the past, before we had to do these kind of combined things, you had put the budget, this is all an Excel spreadsheet, and you'd put the budget up there and then you'd change one parameter and the numbers would all change. Can we still do that?
Yeah, I mean, this is still just
Okay.
an Excel sheet.
And is it something that if the public checks in virtually, they can see your numbers
Yep.
twinkle as they go across the stage there?
Yeah, we can present it. I can move it into more of a Google Doc. That I can, it does the exact same, or a Google Sheet that does the exact same thing.
Can we also have our little gadgets brought back and we can do it ourselves, watch it on our own screen, because it's hard to.
Yeah, we can't watch that.
Sure.
And for the public, can you, when you do stuff like that, can you change the display?
They can't.
And, okay, I didn't know if you could change it and then that's all they would see, so that there's no,
The whole thing is a spreadsheet, not.
yeah,
you
so
don't-
we
you
can't
don't
see who's on the side.
Each individual user should be able to turn off.
No, we're
No,
talking about this one.
Yeah, people aren't necessarily seeing this on their screen, the exact what you're seeing. My screen is being projected up there. People can change
You take
it.
that document and spread it across the whole screen and take the
Yes, he
people
can
off.
change, he can take those people off. Yes, he can.
On
Yeah,
that
but I'll
screen.
see that on my computer, and maybe Randy could,
No, that's what I see at home.
that's exactly what you see at home.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
You can change it.
but you,
Well,
You
It's
can,
hard.
it depends on how many gray hairs you have.
you can change it, but I think what happens is you can change it, but depending on the size that is being presented at,
yeah,
when you change it on yours at home, that size stays the same. It
Like-
just gets rid of the people on the side.
yeah.
There's no way to make it bigger.
I think we should invest in a great big screen that we can put up there instead of that old thing. You
We've
can
been
really
talking
project
about
it.
that for how many years?
I have one, but I don't want it. I'll donate it. Big.
Okay. Everybody good?
Thank you.
Everybody clear?
No, but that's all right.
There's a full screen.
What's the issue, Cindy?
But the only thing it does-
It's been a long day. There's no clarity for me until I go home and get some sleep.
Okay,
So that's, yeah.
well, call me, call Julia, call Jared if you have questions.
Oh,
But not after midnight.
have no fear.
Not after midnight. Not after midnight.
No, no.
Are we
Those
done?
late night calls are saved for Mike.
Yeah,
Was there,
an hour and
Debbie,
12 minutes.
Remember,
Julia.
this is Randy's. Randy has-
Julia, is there anything else that you wanted to highlight in the budget before we go, Jared?
No, I'm not if we're touching on it all.
RTFD. Just read it.
Roger that, Julia. Roger that. Okay,
Okay.
you want to call it?
We're adjourned. Thank you. Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Jim.
Yep, thanks.
So yes, the answer is yes, we can make it big.
I like that. That's why.
Hey, you guys have a safe